a top of the line wheel. It's not the best model they have. It is a good wheel. So I'm showing you the mechanics of it. The things that I like to use, this is called a bat. It holds your wear while you're throwing it. It's easy to move your stuff so you don't have to slice it off the wheel and try to move it to a wear board. This is a bat mate. This is kind of like what us advanced cheaters like to use. It keeps the bat in place. This is a wheel head underneath that. Mostly they're made of steel. The clay bosses over here are made of plastic. So that's why there's like a burn hole over there. It's from the heat gun. This guy's still moving. But it doesn't really matter, I don't think, which direction you put the bat down, but you want to make sure that the bat mate, the little cloth that's down here on the wheel head, and the bat pins, that's what these little things poking up are nice and moist, so you can put this down. Usually when I'm throwing, I'll put the smooth side down so that the rougher side can grip the clay. This on the side, there's a switch on-off button. Up is on, down is off. And there's a forward and reverse switch. I don't know why they call it forward and reverse. I guess because most people, when they throw counterclockwise. Most right-handed folks do. Some would argue that it's not handedness, it's just a preference, or Eastern Western version, but I throw mostly counterclockwise, but sometimes I will throw clockwise. Okay, so what you need in your little bucket of tools for throwing is you want it to have water in it for lubrication, a sponge, a hard rib, wood rib, I don't know, sticky pointy thingy. I don't know the technical term for it. Needle tool. Metal rib of doom. That's the thin metal scraper. It's actually called a scraper. I call it a metal rib of doom. Boom. A little chamois. This is for smoothing rims and whatnot. So that's what is in my ball of tricks when I throw. Not when I trim, just when I throw. Okay, you want to make sure the wheel head is somewhat dry. And probably other ceramics teachers would cringe at the fact that I don't wedge clay right out of the bag, because I believe that it's nice and ready. I've never had any problems with it. So if I'm just doing something small, I'll cut a square and kind of form it into a ball. You always want to wedge clay that's recycled, obviously, because you want to get all the air bubbles out and you want to compress the molecules. So the first thing you want to do is roll it into a ball. And you're going to put it on the wheel head in the center. I'm going to try to as best as you can. Tap it a few times. Some beginners have a problem with it sliding around. There's like water underneath it. So you want to try to make sure there's not really any water underneath on the bat, so that it will move around. You want to try to pat it down really good. So the first technique is called centering. And what the goal is you want to make sure that your clay is completely centered as the wheel is rotating. This is probably the most issues that students have when they're learning how to throw, is learning how to center. What I do is a karate chop. That's what I try to introduce. So one hand, if you're right-handed, one hand on your left-hand side, you're going to be holding or bracing the clay as you're centering. And this, some teachers teach like this. I teach a karate chop, which is like halfway on the clay, where this part of my hand and some of my palm is covering the top and pressing down. You want to put equal pressure to the side and equal pressure down. A lot of people will try to use their arms to center the clay, but you don't want to do that. You're more using the core muscles of your body. And so I use my legs, my back, my muscles, and I will sometimes, I have weak arms, believe it or not, but I really kind of wedge my elbows into my knees to get it to center. I can center this without doing that because it's like a 1 pound ball of clay. It's really easy, but when I'm trying to throw like 13 to 15 pounds, I have a hard time because I don't have a lot of upper body strength. So I have to really use my core muscles to do that. Okay, so you want to get it, you don't want to get it like super crazy fast. You want to make sure at all times that your hands are lubricated with water. Press down, you karate chop, and you press in at the same time, equalness. I'm using my elbow to brace my knee, or my knee to brace my elbow. It's pretty much already centered there. And then we form it to a gumdrop. So I call it a gumdrop. You know what's centered when you feel it in your hands and it's not moving at all. It's completely straight, it's not wobbling at all. Now, that would be off center. If you were to try to open this and raise the walls, you'd have a real problem. So you have to get it back in the center. Karate chop, using this part of your hand and this part of your hand equal pressure. Because it doesn't really have anywhere to go. You have equal pressure, but if you don't have equal pressure, you're going to get, it's going to be off center. When you're using a little bit more clay than this, I teach the coning method. So during centering, especially if you're using recycled clay or clay you're using a second time, coning is you're simply just bringing the clay up and pushing it back down. Other people call this wheel wedging. And you want to eliminate any of this slope that might happen on the bottom of the wheel head where this little gumdrop is. You don't want to see this. A lot of times I'll see this. I'm trying to replicate it, but we'll end up with like this thing around bottom. You don't want that. So I'm going to recenter. Eliminate the slope. And I got my gumdrop back. Okay, so this is now centered. After it's centered, you can open it up. To open it up, you put your thumb kind of not like this, kind of at an angle, and for me it's a personal preference and you kind of learn about doing this as you go, but you kind of press down at an angle, and you don't want to press all the way down to the wheel head because then you're not going to have a bottom. So you want to make sure you give yourself even a little extra. Little extra space. And I did it too slow, so it's a little offset. And then you can open it up just by pulling on the side. Once you have kind of like a shallow bowl, you take your hard rib and you compress the bottom. I have like maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of clay at the bottom of this. When you're learning, the best thing to make is a cylinder, because pretty much everything that you make on the wheel starts off as a cylinder, no matter what it is. Even plates. If you don't compress the bottom, you'll get a crack when it dries and goes through a bisque firing process. So you want to make sure you compress the bottom. For pulling up, start at the bottom, gently pressing. Some people throw with a sponge. I advise against that, because when you throw with the sponge, you can't feel the thickness or any air bubbles in the walls as you're pulling up. So I use my fingers only when I'm pulling up. So basically you're squeezing the wall. If you could get in a little closer, and like get down, like show, yeah. So when you're throwing, you're squeezing the sides and pulling up at the same time. Trying to keep everything even thickness. People have a tendency to press more as they go up. That's why you should always compress the top by gently pressing down with your finger and squeezing, pinching the top. Yay! Okay, so I see there's a bit of water in here. I'm gonna empty the water from my sponge. You don't want to have a lot of water collecting in the bottom of your cylinders. And I need to get rid of this slope. So again, I'm pinching with my fingers. See, it's getting a little wobbly there. It's because I need water on my fingers. It's like got drag. Sorry. Did I splash you?
No, I don't think so.
It's got drag. Now what I'm going to do is collar. And that's basically you're taking your wet hands and gently moving the clay in like this. I think that's good.
Oh yeah, with this you can only see like this round.
It's cool.
So you can't see like your face.
I'm cool. I don't need to be in it.
Yeah, this is really zoomed in, so.
Okay, so I'm expecting you guys to be throwing some cylinders. That's part of your project. So what you need to do, one of the last things, or not even last, you can do it anytime actually, is you can take a rib and you hold it gently on the side and you compress the walls by gliding your finger. You're kind of pinching it. Looks like there's something going on with the motor here. The motor's like, I don't know what it's doing. It's got some kind of weird thing going on. Okay, so one of the last things you're gonna do with when you're throwing is you're gonna take this thing, it's a wooden knife, I guess, and you take off a little bit, like that, just a little bit, and then you get your wire tool, which very carefully,
Whoa.
and then that way it's not stuck to your wear board. It's kind of wet, but there's your cylinder right there.